look.
The production line has started rolling at the DVLA in Swansea, from where the new look licences are being issued. From today, these will be sent to all new drivers who've passed their test. And this will be the style of licence for the rest of Britain's 37 million drivers in years to come. The new licence has a very different look to it. It's smaller than the current one, the size of a credit card. It will carry a photograph of a driver for the first time. And the design is similar to other European licences, making roadside checks easier. The introduction of the new licence will be staggered over the next 12 months. But eventually, when the process is up and running, 27,000 will be produced here in Swansea every day. London solicitor Richard Munden was the first to receive his licence after passing his test from Transport Minister Baroness Hayman this morning. The new licence is similar to one already being used in Northern Ireland, but it will still be accompanied by paper documents. Civil liberty groups say it's little more than a national identity card.
We need to ensure that people can walk the streets anonymously, they can move about without people seeing their identity cards, without seeing driving licences, except where there's some good reason, such as if you're in some kind of accident.
I recognise that it is used by other organisations to establish identity, but I have to tell them that it is not an identity card.
Well, I think it's a good idea, actually.
A nice size, easy to carry around. I've got no problems with it at all.
The government hopes the new licence will be more secure, reducing the risk of theft or fraud, and that will ultimately be popular with drivers. Tim Rogers, ITN, Swansea.
And at this point, we're going to take a short break, but don't go away.
Still to come on the lunchtime news.
The Nazi dictator to proposals for an all-out airborne assault on his mountain hideaway. Eddie Bozio has been finding out more.
Hitler's Berchtesgaden chalet, a fire-blackened wreck.
His remote chalet was one of the locations in which the Allies planned to assassinate Adolf Hitler. Today's documents reveal the details of Operation Foxley, several daring ways they planned to kill the Führer. For months, Britain's Special Operations Executive worked behind enemy lines, gathering information on his daily routines. They drew plans of Hitler's daily walk to breakfast. Special agents considered poisoning his drinks. But Hitler was wary of attempts on his life, and agents decided he'd notice any change. The documents also show plans to persuade a female cleaner to poison the water supply on board his train. They also considered throwing a suitcase of explosives under the carriage. One idea that was quickly dismissed was impregnating his clothes with lethal bacteria if they could get an assassin close enough.
In the midst of the discussions about whether some poison might be used, why go to all the palaver of using a poison? All that you need to get is a strong man within arm's reach of Hitler. He can do it with his bare hands.
Eventually, they narrowed the plans down to a sniper attack during one of his parades, blowing up his train, or an all-out aerial bombardment. But major strategists started to doubt the wisdom of the plan.
SOE's successes all depended on what was practically possible. And this one, they reckoned, A, was not practically possible, B, really more interesting, was not advisable either. Because Hitler was so bad a strategist that it was suited the Allied cause much better to leave him in charge than to bump him off.
Closest attempt on Hitler's life came from one of his own officers. A bomb was left in a suitcase during a meeting, but Hitler escaped before it exploded. Despite their reservations, the Allies were still searching for a suitable assassin to carry out Operation Foxley when Hitler committed suicide. These documents illustrate the regimented, protected lifestyle that Adolf Hitler lived. They also illustrate the high level of detail that went into the plans to assassinate him. Now, for the first time, members of the public can view the quality of Allied intelligence at the turning point of the war. Eddie Bozio, ITN, at the Public Record Office.
I'm joined now by Gervais Cowell, as former Special Operations Executive Advisor. Mr. Cowell, now, of course, you looked after these files for many, many years. Have you been surprised by the excitement now that the contents of the files has been made public?
I've not been surprised insofar as it is a nice, sexy, Dirty Dozen kind of story. I would be unkind of me, perhaps, to recall that they didn't find a Dirk Burgard to do it. So it is one of the things, you know, this is the news that didn't happen today. But otherwise, it is a very impressive story of the collection of the background information that went to it.
It's extraordinary, the detail, the lengths that were plotted to
Yes.
try and get rid of Hitler.
Yes.
Looking back on them, do you think the plans were viable in any way?
No is the answer. They were theoretically viable. They were plans, they were not so much plans as a feasibility study. This was done brilliantly. They were enabled to do it in such detail because one of the prisoners of war was a former valet to Hitler. So he knew all about his personal habits, knew that, for instance, he did have milk in his tea and it went in before the tea, which meant that the poison would go instead of being invisible. Knew that he walked a certain space by himself and therefore he could be shot within that space. Knew that on the train he didn't drink the water out of the taps, he was a good boy, he had it out of a bottle. All these things presented a kind of human picture, indeed, of Hitler, which is quite fascinating. But what failed in the end was there was nobody viable to carry out, to take advantage of all this operational information.
There was one man earmarked, wasn't there, but nothing much is known about him.
There was
Captain Bennett.
Two men were earmarked. Bennett was earmarked to be a sniper. Whether because he'd been good at Bisley or what, nobody knows, or whether he was such a jolly good chap that we know, but he was prepared to do it. What his qualifications were, we don't know, and certainly how he would ever have survived having done it, we don't know.
Gervais Cal, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Savers and borrowers with the Nationwide Building Society should discover